In American courtrooms, jurors are told to trust the science. Hair strands, bite marks, fire patterns, blood spatter, all presented as if they are undeniable truth. But what happens when the science is wrong? Across the United States, people have been sentenced to decades in prison, even death row, because flawed forensics seemed convincing. Tonight, we uncover the dark side of forensics, where science in the courtroom becomes a double-edged sword. The promise of forensics. Forensics was once hailed as the great equalizer. Fingerprints and ballistics revolutionized investigations in the 20th century. Then came DNA, the so-called gold standard, bringing unprecedented accuracy to criminal cases. The public imagination was captured by television dramas like CSI and NCIS. On screen, investigators solved cases with a single hair or a speck of blood. Jurors absorbed this expectation, the CSI effect, demanding scientific proof in every trial. Prosecutors leaned into this. A confident expert with a lab coat could sway juries more than shaky eyewitnesses. But not all forensics stood on solid ground. Some disciplines had little more than tradition behind them, methods created within law enforcement that never passed rigorous scientific testing. This blind trust in the word science became fertile ground for mistakes. Junk science in the courtroom. Take bite mark analysis. For decades, dental experts told juries that every set of teeth was unique, and bite patterns on skin could identify an attacker. In reality, human skin is elastic. Wounds shift as skin heals or swells. Different experts examining the same photo often gave different answers. Yet convictions stacked up on this testimony. Then there's hair comparison. For years, FBI examiners claimed they could match hairs under a microscope, telling juries that it was practically a fingerprint. But in 2015, the Department of Justice revealed that nearly 90% of cases reviewed contained exaggerated or flawed testimony from FBI hair analysts. Imagine that, nearly every case overstated the certainty of a match. Arson investigations were also riddled with errors. For much of the 20th century, fire investigators believed that signs like crazed glass, V-shaped patterns, or wood that looked alligatored proved arson. Modern fire science later revealed those same patterns can appear in accidental fires. Innocent people were branded as killers based on outdated lore. And blood spatter analysis. It looks scientific, measuring angles, droplets, trajectories. But studies have shown that interpretation is highly subjective. Two analysts can look at the same crime scene and reach opposite conclusions. These methods entered courtrooms cloaked in certainty, but lacked the testing that real science requires. The damage they caused would take decades to uncover. Real people, real consequences. The failures aren't abstract. They have names, faces, and lives stolen. Keith Harward. In 1982, he was convicted in Virginia of rape and murder. Two forensic dentists testified his teeth matched bite marks on the victim. That testimony sealed his fate. Harward spent 33 years in prison before DNA proved he wasn't the attacker. Sante Tribble. Convicted of murder in Washington, D.C., based on a single hair. The FBI told jurors it was his. Decades later, DNA testing showed not one of the 13 hairs used at trial belonged to Tribble. He lost 28 years of his life. Cameron Todd Willingham. In 2004, Texas executed him for allegedly setting a fire that killed his 3 children. At trial, investigators testified about burn patterns that supposedly proved arson. Independent experts later reviewed the case and concluded the evidence was outdated and unreliable. If they were right, Texas executed an innocent man. Josiah Sutton. In Houston, Sutton was convicted of rape in 1999 after a crime lab reported DNA results supposedly implicating him. Years later, it was revealed the lab had mishandled cases and overstated results. Sutton was freed after serving nearly 5 years. And then there's the FBI hair scandal. The 2015 review found flawed testimony in hundreds of cases, some involving death sentences. Lives hung in the balance because jurors were told microscopic hair matches were rock solid when they weren't. Each of these stories is a tragedy. Together, they reveal a system too quick to embrace science without testing it first. Why it happens? How do such failures take hold? First, the desire for certainty. Jurors want closure. Prosecutors want conviction. A scientist saying, "It's a match," is powerful, even if the science doesn't support that level of certainty. Second, the lack of peer review. DNA is grounded in decades of global research. But many forensic fields developed inside police departments, passed down from mentor to trainee without independent testing. Third, bias. Analysts often work for law enforcement agencies. If they know police already suspect someone, confirmation bias can steer conclusions. Fourth, underfunded labs. Overloaded examiners sometimes rush or cut corners. In the most notorious cases, misconduct occurs. Analysts in Massachusetts, Annie Ducon and Sonia Farrick, were caught falsifying results or using seized drugs themselves, tainting thousands of cases. And finally, legal inertia. Once someone is convicted, courts are reluctant to reopen cases. Even when science advances, judges and prosecutors resist undoing verdicts for fear of setting precedents or admitting systemic failure. The result? Wrongful convictions that take decades to correct, if they're corrected at all. The push for reform. Reform is possible. In 2009, the National Academy of Sciences issued a landmark report condemning much of forensic practice as scientifically untested. It called for research, independent oversight, and blind testing to minimize bias. Since then, courts have begun to restrict certain types of testimony. Bite mark evidence has been excluded in multiple states. Fire science is being updated with modern experiments. The FBI has admitted to errors and partnered with innocence groups to review old cases. The Innocence Project has used DNA to expose hundreds of wrongful convictions, many tied to bad forensic testimony. Their work shows not just that errors happen, but that they happen systematically. Some states are now considering independent forensic labs, separated from police and prosecutors, to ensure neutrality. Training has improved, emphasizing that science must present probabilities, not certainties. Still, reform is slow. The legal system resists change. For many wrongfully convicted, justice comes too late. Forensics can illuminate truth, but only when it's real science. The dark side of forensics shows us what happens when courts mistake authority for accuracy. Lives lost. Families broken. Trust betrayed. The next time someone in court says, "The science doesn't lie," remember, science is only as good as the people and methods behind it. And when junk science passes as truth, it's the innocent who pay the price. This is Silent Veil. Subscribe for cinematic true crime every Tuesday and Friday, as we reveal how evidence, technology, and law collide in the fight for justice.